Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. We are unpacking a truly fascinating, super comprehensive academic study on global challenges. It's really a deep dive into the very fabric of our modern world. Now, if you've ever felt like the news is just this endless barrage of totally unrelated, chaotic events, well, you're gonna love this study, because it actually organizes all that chaos for us. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. So let's dive right in and make some sense of the complex forces shaping our lives today.
So think about this for a second. How exactly are a collapsed bank, a warming planet, and a global pandemic actually connected? I mean, on the surface, they seem completely unrelated, right? You've got finance, the environment, and biology. But as our source material reveals, they are intimately linked. Throughout this explainer, we're going to build what the research calls a domino effect narrative. By the end, you'll see exactly how the very first domino tipping over eventually knocks down the whole shebang.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with major global shocks, move through the climate emergency, conflict and forced migration, poverty and global health, the crisis domino effect, and then finally, solutions for a better future. Section 1. Major global shocks. From Wall Street to Wuhan.
When we look at the recent timeline of events, you'll notice it kicks off back in 2008. The research really highlights how lowered lending standards in the U.S., specifically those subprime mortgages, combined with institutional greed and just a total lack of oversight, brought down massive financial giants like Lehman Brothers, and it cascaded incredibly fast. By 2009, we were deep in the Great Recession, dealing with massive global job losses and plunging GDPs everywhere. Then, fast forward literally just a decade, and boom, another massive shock hits, but from a completely different vector. In late 2019, COVID-19 emerges in Wuhan, China. And because of rapid human-to-human transmission and a super long incubation period, by January 2020, the WHO declared a global health emergency. We basically went from institutional greed paralyzing the global economy to a novel virus doing the exact same thing just a few years later.
And man, this just perfectly illustrates how a single shock can mutate, right? COVID-19 didn't just stay a health crisis. The research points out all these cascading impacts. Yes, there were tragically millions of casualties, absolutely. But it also caused severe supply chain gridlocks. I mean, think back to those empty grocery shelves we all remember. It totally interrupted the education of millions of students worldwide. The isolation and quarantine measures sparked this parallel mental health crisis characterized by really severe anxiety and depression. And economically, it dramatically widened the gap between the rich and the poor, especially when it came down to vaccine access. A biological event mutated into an economic, educational, and psychological crisis.
All right, Section 2. The climate emergency, a warming planet.
Take a second to really look at that number. 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. It might sound kind of small, but according to the academic research we're examining, this massive number represents the projected global temperature rise by the end of this century if our carbon emissions remain unchecked. At that level, the source explicitly warns that entire parts of our planet could become completely uninhabitable.
So, what's absolutely crucial here is understanding the direct chain of causation. We've got the root causes on one side, burning fossil fuels like oil, coal, and gas, alongside massive deforestation and industrial agriculture. And on the flip side, the catastrophic effects, melting polar ice, rising sea levels threatening coastal cities, and a really sharp increase in severe natural disasters. Actually, keep this in the back of your mind for later. Notice how agriculture is both a cause and a victim here. Ruined agricultural systems from extreme weather will inevitably lead to global hunger, which perfectly sets up our next major challenge.
Moving on to Section 3. Conflict and forced migration, the human cost.
Now, the academic source identifies several major regional conflicts that have caused just immense suffering. In Syria, we see massive infrastructure destruction, leaving hundreds of thousands dead and millions displaced. The research also highlights the Palestine-Israel conflict, pointing to long-term occupation, settlement building in Palestinian territories, and deep-rooted refugee crises as major drivers of profound regional instability. Furthermore, it details severe humanitarian emergencies in Yemen, violence against the Rohingya in Myanmar, and forced flight due to ongoing conflict in South Sudan. And across all of these really diverse political situations, the universal tragedy remains exactly the same: profound human displacement and suffering.
Which leads us to this, honestly, staggering figure. Over 100 million people. To put that into perspective, that is more than the entire populations of the UK and Australia combined. No way around it, that is a massive number. That's the amount of forcibly displaced individuals worldwide right now. According to the data, this includes 29 million refugees forced to cross international borders, simply searching for basic physical safety, fleeing war, persecution, and natural disasters.
Next up, Section 4. Poverty and global health, the silent crisis.
Right now, as we're speaking, more than 700 million people live in extreme poverty. That literally means surviving on less than a single US dollar a day. Furthermore, 800 million people suffer from chronic hunger. This level of systemic poverty creates a massive vulnerability in the human population. It practically invites disease to take hold, which fuels the next set of data perfectly.
And, this poverty builds directly into an overwhelming global health burden. The source details that 37 million people are currently living with HIV/AIDS. There are 10 million annual cases of tuberculosis, which is an airborne disease that really thrives in impoverished areas. And chronic diseases like cancer claim 10 million lives annually. But what's also incredibly alarming is the rapidly rising mental health crisis the source highlights. Get this, an estimated 750 million people worldwide are suffering from psychological disorders like depression and anxiety.
All right, Section 5, the crisis domino effect, how everything connects.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this matrix synthesizes the entire academic study into just one view. You can see the sheer overlapping scope of these events. You have the catastrophic financial and COVID shocks hitting globally, overlapping with ongoing, extremely severe regional conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, all while the severe and rising tide of climate change constantly batters poor and island nations. It's a continuous, completely overlapping matrix of pressure.
So let's connect the dots here. This is the domino effect in action. The study proves that climate change ruins agriculture, which directly causes hunger and forces migration. Armed conflicts don't just destroy buildings, they trigger massive refugee crises, destroy sanitation, causing disease, and totally disrupt food supplies, causing starvation. Extreme poverty accelerates how fast a disease outbreaks, and economic crises, like that one in 2008, deepen poverty, which in turn breeds more sickness and even further conflict. A climate shock in one region inevitably creates a migration crisis in another. It's all one single, deeply interconnected web.
Finally, Section 6, Solutions for a Better Future, Breaking the Chain.
Here's the good news. Because the roots of these crises are linked, the solutions are completely linked too. Our source material lays out this really clear ladder of intervention. Step 1 is international. Nations have got to cooperate to forge binding agreements and heavily fund sustainable green investments. Step 2 is national. Governments must build resilient societies by investing heavily in high-quality education, universal healthcare access, and strong food security. But look at Step 3. The global change eventually trickles all the way down to the individual. That's you and me, raising our own awareness, practicing responsible consumption, and getting out there and volunteering.
Let's zoom in on that individual power for a second. Responsible consumption. It's defined as the practice of minimizing waste, choosing eco-friendly products, and making informed choices. It sounds kind of small on its own, but when millions practice this, it literally severs the domino chain. Lowering consumption reduces fossil fuel demand, which slows climate change, which protects agriculture, which prevents hunger and reduces forced migration. Your individual daily choices have real global leverage.
The researchers actually conclude their study with this really powerful thought. Hope lies in humanity's ability to cooperate, innovate, and sacrifice for the common good. Every small step counts. We've seen how deeply connected our problems are today, but that really just means our solutions and our hopes are equally interconnected.
So, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. What is your first step toward building a more stable future today? Whether it's changing a buying habit, educating a friend, or supporting a humanitarian cause, you are a part of this matrix. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, for focusing in, and for learning with me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and I will see you next time.